Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Rage On podcast. I am your host, Dr. Kyle Dean Freeman, licensed physiotherapist and men's empowerment coach. Today, I have on a friend from Montreal, Canada. His name is Max Payant-Chartier. He facilitates temples. He holds men's circles as well as does empowerment work for men and women online and in person. So, Max, I'm super happy to have you on here today, brother. Thanks for coming on, man.
Really happy to be here. Thank you for proposing this. It was fun to receive your invite. I was really happy about it.
Yeah, man. Well, when we met in an interesting way at a retreat where we weren't necessarily allowed to know each other's identities or know much about each other as we went through this transformative experience. And I realized after the fact that I was like, damn, I would really like to actually get to know who Max is. And I was like, I gotta have this guy on. He helps men as well as I do. And I know a lot of men could benefit from hearing from you. So if you could, just give the audience a little backstory about initially where you're from and the story that kind of led up to where you're at now and what you're doing today.
Yeah, it's actually I 3 years ago I was in a completely different field. I'm someone who worked as a product manager for big tech. I did that for 10 years. So it's definitely, I think, related in some sense, but I was in a completely different type of world where I was building software products and then met my current partner. She was into this tantra stuff. It was actually our first date was a very energetic experience that it was a bit out of this world. And through sort of connecting to her world, what she was into, and then finding ISTA in 2021, I connected with a whole other facet of, I would say, the human experience. And by going to these places, I started getting feedback from men and women that were coming to me and saying, I feel like you're the safest person in the room and things like that. And I was like, okay, what is that all about? And I became a temple facilitator because people were thanking me for holding the space at events I was participating in. Um, and so it was this whole discovery of this side of me that people perceived, but I was kind of blind to it. And so I always say the curse of being anyone is that we don't know what a room feels like when we're not in it.
Mhm.
And this was a lot of reflection that brought me to the point where I am today.
Beautiful, man. And just for those who are unaware of what temples are, obviously, I'm aware we met in one, but could you just share a bit about what temples are for someone who is completely new to that term?
Yeah, temples are what I would call exploration spaces. And so there are spaces where, first of all, they're based on connection, they're based on eros, but there are spaces where you can come in a safe environment to learn about communicating desires, hearing other people's reaction to your desires, um, communicating boundaries, negotiating on what interaction is available between you and another person. And so to me, they're a playground, they're intentional spaces where you come to connect with people, but also you go there to practice the tools that you might have learned from an empowerment coach or that you might have learned from an intimacy coach. Before you sort of go out in the world and you don't have support for it, temple space is a safe space to come do that. And obviously, there are spaces where people come to connect. If you heard about play parties, I would call them intentional play parties. So there's a bit more consciousness. There's no alcohol involved, but it's definitely an atmosphere of coming to connect with people from the platonic to the sexual. Everything is sort of welcome in the space.
Beautiful. And I love how you bring up the intention behind it as in relation to, for many people out there, might be more familiar with psychedelics or drugs of their choosing, marijuana, alcohol, is that we can go about intaking those substances for fun, for pleasure, for partying, but we can
Mhm.
also go about it in an intentional way. So I love how you bring that up of temples are a way of intentionally connecting with those in a way in which we're really lacking nowadays in society. But you brought up a great point earlier that you had the reflection back to you from others that they felt safe with you, something that you didn't recognize prior. What is it about your energy specifically that you've found out that helps people to feel safe around you? And what does that do for them? What does that facilitate for them?
Mhm. I feel that there's two components to it. I'm very grounded in myself and I'm present to the moment. So I'm in the here and now, and that gives people a sense of safety. First of all, one thing is if someone's present when they're looking at you or when they're interacting with you, the feeling that you get is that you're seen and that you're being taken in. And so already you're held by their presence in a sense, and that brings a sense of security to start with. And then I'm someone who doesn't need things from people in a very real way. When I'm interacting with you, I'm not looking to get anything from you. And whether that's in a coaching situation or I'm talking to someone to let's say get them to they're interested in signing up for coaching. The energy that I have is an energy of I have this for you, but I don't need this. I'm here for you if this is a fit, but if it isn't, it isn't, and that's perfect. And that's the knowledge that you know will be respected at every time. That brings a sense of security because there's no what I call them energetic hooks. Like I'm not trying to hook into you to bring you into anything. I'm actually just here for the interaction that we're having, and I'm not looking for an outcome.
Mm. I love that. It's more just the invitation to come in, and if you want to take the action for yourself, you're welcome in. And I know you share that and it resonates because when I first started out, whether it was being a physiotherapist or in the coaching space, that there were times where I was in a place of scarcity and there was this slight need, like I need a client, I need this patient so that I can feel safe, I can feel secure. And in most of those situations, I didn't get clients because that energy is felt in
Mhm.
many ways. That people, whether it's through body language, through the tone of voice, and I know many men who might be listening to this might come from that place in relationships, maybe not in work or career, but in their interactions romantically. How can a man shift out of that place of scarcity and into more of this place of abundance where they are inviting people into their life from your own experience?
My own experience is it starts with practicing with little things. And I like to use a baseball analogy here. If you think of the best baseball players, their batting average are about, I don't know, 30%. What is it? Like some of
Yeah.
the best in the world, right? Like batting average, 30%. That means
Yeah.
that they miss 60% of the time. Um, Yet they're some of the best in the world at whatever it is that they do, right? And if you're great, you're going to be 0.28, right? Like your numbers are like you're still amazing, but like you're inching away from the 30%. Um, but in order to get to that 30%, they had to go at bat a lot and a lot and a lot of times. And you don't hit a home run the first time you're at bat. And the idea is to go for those singles. It's to go for these places where maybe there's less need, or in this interaction, you're taking a risk, but you're taking a risk knowing that you're doing it and that you're doing it in order to take the risk, not because you expect the outcome at the end of it. And so it's like pull back your attention just a little bit and like focus on the fact that you're doing a rep here.
Mhm.
Like you're giving it one rep of trying to convey desire, convey in your relationships. It could be a simple desire, reaching out to a friend to say, hey, I want us to grab a beer next week. I'm available on Tuesday and Friday, right? Like at this time and this time, I would like to go to this place. That's one rep of making a request and let it land however it lands. And it for some people that might already feel like that's a lot and it creates anxiety. Like
Mhm.
start with those reps before you walk up to the 10 at the bar and you like think that you're going to tell her everything that you want to do to her later tonight. Like before you get to those reps, and probably you can do that, and like I've seen you interact in very powerful ways, but like that's not the first thing you tried on your first time at bat. And
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure that
absolutely.
you understand that you're maybe 30% at bat on in those situations. You don't expect home runs all the time.
Can't always expect it. You're right though. And it resonates deeply with me, especially in this very moment. As you saw before we started the call, I'm in Lake Atitlan right now. If you're only listening, there's a beautiful background, so you should go watch this on YouTube if you want to see this very serene Kyle in nature. But I'm here because I'm hosting a new event of mine focused on sacred rage and helping people tap into that of their life so they can feel more power and love. And there's been so much resistance. Before coming here, I had no one buy tickets beforehand. And I was like, I might show up, spend 7 hours traveling, spend $700 on this space, and there's a chance no one comes because it's the end of the season here. So this is like the not a great time to host an event. But I just said, hey, this is an opportunity for me to do a practice run, to just try to validate the experience and learn from it, to see what people like, what works, what doesn't work, so that when I do take it a step further and do go to the US and spend way more money on event spaces and time,
Mhm.
that at least I feel more confidence going into it. So it just brings up that feel of exposure therapy for those men out there. If you are trying to put yourself out there and date, just go talk to that person first. Just don't think about getting married or having a girlfriend or having sex. Just say hi and get to know someone. Um, and that's what I gained from what you shared. But what I'm curious is, have you always felt this confident in stepping into this action-based living, is what I say, versus the one where you're just hoping or passive that things will come your way? Or did you struggle to get to this place?
That's a great question, and it's something that obviously I've had all kinds of struggle, and and I was the scrawny kid, like I was the also a late bloomer, so I got my growth spurt between I think 18, 17, around 17 or 18.
Wow.
I got my growth spurt. People that I went to high school with like don't recognize me when they cross me. Um,
The beard helps nowadays.
yeah, the beard really helps. But coming from that place, like I was, and I say it in English, I think I was meek amongst the meek. Like I was someone who, like you, I wouldn't allow people to step on me. I always had like a lot of character, but I didn't know how to put myself out there socially. I was not relatively, I was awkward socially. Um, Very hard for me to understand in exchanges what how to exchange with people to make it like a good conversation if you want. And so I had to learn all of these skills, and I essentially went at it with a very technical mind. I ran experiments. I was like, let me try this thing and see what if it works or if it doesn't work. And then early on, I noticed certain things that were leading to certain outcomes. Like the friend zone thing was a thing that I got friend zoned so many times. And I couldn't even recognize when I wasn't being friend zoned. The number of women that I was in there, like that I went to a bar, got invited to their place for a place to crash. Like I was searching for a place to crash, got invited back to their place. They didn't give me the couch. They were like, "No, you can sleep with me," and I never made a move.
Mm.
I didn't even understand that that was like that they don't the women don't do that with men. They don't, they don't want to interact, have at least some kind of physical contact with. Like I must have frustrated so many women. Like that was me at 19, 20, like not understanding what these social interactions contracts were and running experiments and failing. Like
Mhm.
Like I don't think about those situations again, but when I look back, I'm like, buddy, like, come on. It was pretty obvious. But like that's where like we all have to learn it. Like
Mhm.
and I had to learn it the hard way. I had to run these experiments myself, right? I'm really thankful that I had that mindset though of like let's test it out. Let's see what works and what doesn't. And worst comes to worst, like I'm not going to be worse off than I am right now because I was lonely. So it's
Mm.
like, you know, whatever outcome I get, even if it's 1, 2, 3% chance better than what I have right now, well, that's already progress over where I'm at. And if I don't do anything different, I'm going to stay in place. And that was
Yeah.
really the mindset that drove it. And that still drives me to this day. Progress over perfection always.
Mhm. I love that, and it's something I resonate with because a lot of clients that come work with me, they have that fear of rejection, and that stops them from even taking an action. And I always say, you're not here for the outcome; you're here to learn. And the more action steps you take, the more information you gain, the more you learn, and then the confidence comes with that too, right? So I love, I resonate with what you shared. There's been times where I've haven't taken the cue, but it's also from a place of respect of I don't want to advance on someone. And then it leads to, for me, my experience is I realized it was in relation to not wanting to get yelled at, not wanting to be wrong or uh, unloved
Mm,
because of the experiences I had with my dad and my mom growing up. And so I was fearful that if I did advance, and did something that they would hate me or not love me and I would be a terrible person again.
mm.
And so that's my experience. Does that resonate with you at all? And why you didn't make those advancements, or was it strictly like just a social cue you weren't getting?
I think at the time, I didn't know how. Like there's these transition
Mm,
moments, I think, in dating especially, and with women, there's these transition moments. It's like, okay, I'm having dinner with her, and now I want to convey physical attractiveness, or I want to convey my interest to go further, and that's a transition moment where you're looking to not necessarily transition the relationship, but you're looking to move things forward one, and you come to sort of a gauntlet, right? And I've had situations where like one of my exes on at the moment where I was gonna make a move, right? Like we're gonna sit on the couch, let's say, or whatever. We're transitioning to sitting on the couch, and whatever she sits 3 seats away from me on the couch. So now I'm like, in order to make a move, I have to cross a whole couch, right? And so I was like
it's
that, like,
obvious.
and so obviously that transition moment was like, okay, this is not happening right now, right? But as she left that evening, we got closer physically, obviously, as I'm like, you know, leading her to the door and whatever. And then there was an opportunity because we're physically close to convey that I like. And today I would do it completely differently, but back then I went in for the kiss. But
Hmm.
today I would actually ask. Like I'm way more confident about my desire and where I'm at, and if I know that I want to move forward in in being more, let's say, physical with the person, or I want to like I come to one of these transition points, I'll just be straightforward and say, hey, like I really feel like kissing you right now. How do you feel about that?
Mm.
And because I there's less neediness and everything, like there's no hooks in it. And it's just like if I get a no, I'm like thank you for taking care of yourself. There's no like I'm not expecting anything. I'm putting myself out there. And that feels very vulnerable for a lot of people. But if you make the first vulnerable move, that opens the other person to then be vulnerable. And if they're feeling the same, then they get to do it, and you
Hmm.
get to have your desire met. Um, so you can wait, but the disadvantage of waiting is that you don't get to find out oftentimes. So.
Yeah. Yeah. And also that waiting can also add to the anxiety of the situation. I always think about this time I was in the Philippines and there was this bridge that people jumped off into the water for fun. It was maybe 30 feet. And I would just watch some people who would just stand there and stand there and stand there until eventually they just gave up and got off.
Mhm.
Or they almost risked hurting themselves because they couldn't fully commit to the act, right? And I know there's definitely men listening to this right now who have been in similar situations, who have wanted to make a move or wanted to speak their desires, but they just couldn't. And this is 2024. I don't know if you've seen it, but there's social media trends. I especially see it in like the gym. God forbid a guy looks at a girl in the gym or even does approach a woman in public. Sometimes these women shame these men for how they approached. Uh, and it wasn't always in this the way that they paint it, that they were this predator, they were trying to do something, right? Some men just don't know how to do it, or they feel awkward because they
Yeah.
haven't had the reps. And so they are fearful, many men, of getting made to be put in this light of I'm a predator, I'm this, I'm that. And I think this stops a lot of men. But on the opposite end, about 70% of women want to be approached. They want to be approached. So there's this complete disconnect of men being afraid because of what they've seen, and then women wanting to be approached, but also projecting all of this "don't approach me" energy.
Yeah.
So how do you feel men should handle this and go about this? And how have you worked about it in addition to just communicating your desires?
The times that I've done it is I got a cue that it was welcome. And so I'll explain an example. I get in line at like the I was getting wine, and I get in line b behind this lady, and she's looking at me as I get in line. And then she's the next, like she's like obviously the line goes forward and goes forward one person, and she goes forward, but then she doubles back and looks at me again. Right? Like, so she went back to her business and then looks around again. I'm like, oh, so like I quickly paid for my things, and like I just caught up to her like in the parking lot, and I asked her like, hey, can I have your number? Would you like to go on a date? And she was stoked. So it's like these, like meeting if your eyes cross or something, and there's a little bit of a, I will say, if the boundary or if the awkwardness has been breached in that there's already like an opening contact. Like I'll tell a situation that was super bold. This happened to me. I was starting to gain confidence. I'm on the bus in line again. This happens to me in line, it seems. I'm on the bus, I'm in line, I'm looking at this girl, she's so pretty. And like I'm staring. I'm clearly not being subtle about it. I'm staring. It's awkward. Like, and on the bus, I end up sitting like these two seats are like this, and I end up sitting right across from her. And I'm staring again. And at some point, she just gets fed up. She looks at me like dead in the eye, and she goes, "What the fuck are you looking at?" And I just stopped. I said, "I'm looking at you. Seriously, you're you look amazing." And like I just can't help myself. I apologize. It's just like it's like it's stronger than me at this point. I've been trying to stop, and it just keeps happening. She started talking to me because of this interaction, because I was honest about what was happening. She started talking to me, and she became my girlfriend.
Wow.
And the first words that she ever said to me were, "What the fuck are you looking at?"
And is that your current girlfriend?
No, no. This was a
Oh,
long time ago. This was a long time ago, but like it just shows that like if you have an in, like
yeah.
it's not about like the energy that's coming at you. It's about what do you want this interaction to be about.
Mm.
And so obviously if you're in reaction and you go defensive, you're done. Like as soon as you react, you're going to be in a situation where you're just going to be defensive, where I went with honesty. I went with,
Mhm.
hey, here are the cards. Here's what's on the table. And she actually felt bad because she like what she told me afterwards was like she felt bad because she had such like a strong energy and I hadn't done anything really bad. And like she felt bad, so she started talking to me because she felt bad about the way that she talked to me. But that got me in the conversation instead of like an awkward bus ride.
Wow. Yeah, there's a lot of lessons. Wait in lines because you might have the opportunity to catch eyes. But I love that point you bring up because it's something I share and I've learned too of the point of honesty. Whether you're sitting in a bus or on a line and staring at someone, maybe be a little more under the table about it. Or even something as simple as you see someone and we put so much pressure on ourselves as men of the outcome, right? Of or what's going to happen if I go up to this girl in this cafe or this bar or wherever, and they're going to just reject me. I'm going to look stupid in front of their friends. And just coming back to, you don't have to have the outcome in mind. Just go do the action and think about how can I just have an honest conversation and just honestly say what's on my mind, share that information and see how it's received. And if it's not received well, you're just redirected. You're not
Mhm.
rejected, you're just redirected away from that, whatever that energy was. And now you've just learned something. Okay, that is clearly not the energy I want. So it redirects you towards the energy you do want. And I know I've been there. And I know when I've gotten to that place of where I was exploring non-monogamy, it felt so good to just say, here I am on a silver platter, take
Mhm.
it or leave it. Like, here,
Yeah.
I am putting all out there for you. This is honestly where I'm at, who I am, and what I'm interested in right at the beginning. And so many men are afraid of that. I know I've been, and maybe you've gone through that. And it ends up leading to lies. It leads to a false facade of what this looks like. And then months later, the truth comes out and there's breakdown.
Yeah.
Have you ever experienced that where you haven't been in your truth and in your full expression, and it led to breakdown later in life or later in a relationship?
Yeah, definitely. And I've also experienced the op like and so I've experienced the both sides of it. I've experienced the side of showing up for fully as myself and being rejected for it in a relationship, which was super like hurt me a lot. And that's a possibility. And also the I'm trying to I'm trying to be who I think this person wants me to be in
Mm.
order to be in a relationship with them. Um, and that leads to all of the things. And I'll say this is the for me, this was the curse of being good looking in certain situations, is that I would attract more people and I wasn't good at filtering the people who were for me. And so I just said yes to whatever was coming my way, and then I tried to fit them. And that led to all kinds of breakdowns.
And do you
Like
know,
it leads to tension, it leads to feeling like you're like the imposter syndrome, but in your relationship, like she doesn't like me for me, like she doesn't know the real me, and all of those things. Also, you start compromising on values, and you can compromise on dishes and on the furniture. You can compromise on those things, but you can't compromise on your values. You're gonna end up resenting them, and you're gonna want to run away.
in those moments when you did try to be something for acceptance, do you know what the reason was? Was there a fear behind expressing who you authentically were in the moment?
I feel like that was always that was something that was core trauma for me. When I was growing up, I had friends, and they were older kids that were on this street that I live on. Um, and what happened was that I was I wasn't going to school back then, and I had a computer before anyone had a computer. So I had computer games when I was like 4 or 5, and the kids that were older that were on my street liked to play computer with me, and so they would come hang out, and we would hang out all the time. But when I went into first grade, and I took the bus with them, they were my friends. Like I was hanging out with them. I'd been hanging out with them for 2 years, and so I wanted to go talk to them because I knew them, but they were in fifth or sixth grade, and I didn't understand what that meant, like social, what the social contracts were, because I was way too young to understand the things that you know, kids in sixth grade don't hang out with kids in first grade. I didn't understand that because they'd been hanging out with me for 2 years. Like, and so I got beat up. Like they didn't tell me, Max, like we can't do this. There's this whole social contract that we can't. Like they just beat me up so that I would go away. But I'm a stubborn freaking idiot, and so I kept just getting beat up. Um, and but that in my nervous system that taught me that I can't trust the people that I feel close to and that I'm vulnerable with. I can't be vulnerable with people because they're going to betray me. And so that led to all of these other things for me where I will say I didn't know how to be a friend, and I was buying friendship in a sense, or buying a relationship by molding myself to what I thought people wanted me to be.
Mm. I definitely resonate with that, man. And I kind of grew up being that chameleon, is what I call it, of fitting in wherever just to be loved and accepted. Because I felt a lot of the same feelings in my own household from my parents of never being good enough. And so when I went out in the world, I just wanted to be accepted. And we've both seen the consequences of not expressing ourselves authentically and creating these false relationships or false perspectives of what this relationship is and what I stand for. And it ultimately will lead to breakdown because you're building it on a faulty foundation. And I'm sure many men out there have experienced that as well of building these faulty foundations because in the past they've been hurt for being a certain way, for their height, for their penis size, for how they dressed or how much money they made or how what they do for work. And so they don't want to be truthful. They'll lie on dating apps. They'll lie about their job just because they just want the love and acceptance. And I'm glad you brought it up because it's just the recognition that hey, there's 8 billion, almost 9 billion people out there, and there's going to be a lot that aren't for you, but there are some that are there. And the quicker you are just expressing authentically and honestly and putting yourself out there on a silver platter, you'll be more easily directed towards what is for you and who will accept you. And I know that's what
Yeah.
happened when I started doing it, is that not only did I get quicker towards the people who did accept me,
Mhm.
but I also saved myself and others the pain, the emotional distress of now I've built this faulty foundation and now it makes the pain that's inevitably going to come worse. And
Yeah.
then we shut off more easily. And so,
I have an analogy for this actually, and I call this
yeah,
the ice cream rule.
let's hear it.
And it's how I explain it to men, especially in the dating scene and in this world. Um, Imagine that you're standing in an ice cream parlor, right?
I'm there.
Somebody goes there, somebody walks in, and they're looking at all the different flavors of ice cream, right? And then the person at the counter goes, "Which one do you want? You want chocolate or vanilla?" The person goes, "Chocolate." Do you know what vanilla doesn't do in that situation? I'm freaking worthless. There's no way no one's ever gonna love me. They pick chocolate. I don't have any intrinsic value. There's nothing I can bring to the world. And I'm using ice cream as an example because it makes it funny. But some of us are not vanilla and chocolate. Some of us are
Pistachio.
pistachio, bubble gum with mint and some chocolate thrown in and maybe cranberries. Like I don't know what it is. And maybe that flavor isn't for everyone. But the people who like that flavor, they're all about it.
Yes.
That's the only thing they want every time they go to get ice cream. And so when you think about like yourself as an ice cream flavor, it's way easier to think about like remember in this situation you're just vanilla. Like and not go into this like what does this mean about me and about whatever like no. Like vanilla doesn't do that, I don't do that. Just
And vanilla, not in the bad way. It's
yeah,
okay to
like
be vanilla actually.
a lot of
And
people love vanilla. Like,
yes, yes, I have learned that as well. And hey, being vanilla sometimes is nice. I don't have the time to always be Rocky Road. or
Yeah.
chocolate chip. Um, I love that analogy, and I might use that in the future. Um,
Please do. If I can spread this analogy to all of men, I think we'll have done a great job.
yeah, I'll just make sure to use the more extreme flavors. Not everyone loves mudslide, but some people love it. You brought up a good point though earlier about your values and when you're creating relations and putting yourself out there that you want values to be met and to be
Mhm.
agreed upon. Maybe not every single one, right? We can't always be 10 for 10. Um, but what are those values that you do come back to, those core values when you're making decisions and creating relations with others, whether that's romantically, in
Mhm.
business, or any type?
For myself, integrity is definitely at the top of my list. I feel like it's the number one thing for me. And in integrity, I don't mean that I will never fuck up,
Hmm.
because I feel like that's the bar that a lot of people um, might put integrity as. But to me, integrity is I will hold myself to a certain to my standard, and if I fuck up, I will take responsibility for it. And so I look for that in my partner, because there's situations where we're not going to see eye to eye, and there's situations where she's going to fuck up, and I need the person in front of me to be able to also own up to their side of the story. Um, because no dynamic is you don't create a dynamic alone.
Mm.
Dynamics are created with two people, and two people need to be able to own what is in the dynamic. Um, I think, yeah, that's definitely integrity is at the top. For me, compassion, um, gratitude, they're in the we often I need to be able to be with someone, and I want to be able to be grateful for what's around me, for what's in my life. It doesn't mean that things always go my way, but I'm still in an incredibly privileged situation. I There's still beauty no matter what. And it can be small things. Like, to me, practicing gratitude is taking time to enjoy my food. It's being thankful for it's taking care of things. To me, that's part of being grateful, taking care of my house. Like, I'm grateful to the people who helped me, and by taking care of the house, I'm paying it back. Like, I'm showing that their effort was worthwhile. That, like investing in me was a good idea, because I'll take care of the effort and the things that came my way. Um, that's definitely the things that are there. I value power.
Mm.
It's definitely a thing that I value. I value my power, and I value other people's power. I want to have power with, not power over. And so being with a partner that also values that, and we're both community leaders, so we're definitely trying to raise other people up, and to have them stand in their own power, and come to
Mm.
realize what that means for them. Love, obviously, I think power goes with love. You need to have both. My men's circle is called Heart and Balls, because I was tired of hearing about masculinity from men where all I could feel was their balls, and other men, all I could feel was their heart. You need both. You need both. Don't chop off your balls because you want to be all heart, and don't get rid of your heart because you're all balls. It doesn't work. And so, yeah, definitely that, and courage. Be courageous. Like,
Yeah.
and however that is, like, um, there's a lot that's coming our way as men in this age. There's a lot of change that's happening. There's a lot of things being said about men, and it's going to take courage. Whatever's coming, whatever's definition of masculinity that you have, uh, courage and strength are going to be things that you're going to need, and you should. I try to cultivate that, um, for myself, and by strength, that means also um, community. It means asking for help, connecting with other men. It's something that we've been driven out of, And when I talk about strength, I don't just mean the individual strength, but the strength of leaning on each other and of knowing that I can't do it all alone, that I don't have all of the skills, that other people have skills that I need and that they're better at than I will ever be. And I'll go for them to them for that, and I'll trust them um, for their piece of it. And so creating alliance and yeah, as a king, you want other kingdoms. You want to be trading with other kingdoms, and you want to help raise other kingdoms to so that everyone flourishes.
Mm. I love that, man. That like kind of goes, it's like you're in my head a little bit because you brought up that point of some men are all hearts, some men are all balls. And I'm like, there's images of people who are coming in my head.
Yeah.
I'm just like, God, I do not fuck with that at all. It's the many of the red pilled, like highly red pilled are all
Yeah.
balls. And man up, and the men's groups surrounding that are all rah rah. And I'm like, and then there's the opposite end where it's let's all hug each other and sit in circle and hold hands and look in each other's eyes all day. And I'm like, "Ugh, I can't do that either." It's like, where is that balance? And in my work, I don't fall in either. I kind of fall in the middle as well of like, I want that firmness to know, hey, you got my back, and I'm gonna hold the line for you, and I know you're gonna hold the line for me. But
Mhm.
also, hey man, like talk to me, what's going on? Like let's be open. And I feel that's a healthy place to be, but there's also that feeling of you have to be in an extreme to make a point and to really attract people for some reason. And so I've, in some points of my life and in my career, I felt shame over not being all balls, for example, or not being all light and all heart. And speaking of, the event I'm trying to hold this weekend is focused on rage. It's kind of the idea behind this podcast and what I'm
Mhm.
doing now is listen, you can love each other, but showing your rage is a deep form of love. It's showing, hey, that I will step into my darkness for you
Mhm.
because it's showing my deepest form of love for my brothers, for me, for my sisters. And so I'm curious, you brought up courage as one of your values. Were there times that you were really in the deep darkness of your life that really required you to find that courage in you to get through that moment in your life?
This is an interesting question, and it brings about a lot of other tangents that I don't know if we have time for, but I'll try to answer.
Sure.
The real answer to that is probably no. And it's been an ongoing question for me. In these healing spaces, in these spiritual spaces that I've been in and that we inhabit, there's this idea that the dark night of the soul is like a moment that you have to go through. Like that it's almost like a rite of passage that if you haven't done it, then you're not the real thing or something. And I don't remember a moment that was deep enough and that was at the bottom enough for me that when I hear those descriptions, that I can say, that feels like this moment in my life. And so I want to bring a kind of a little bit of a difference here and of a different perspective on this. I think that the bottom of the barrel is however far you're willing to let yourself go.
Mhm.
So if you ask me the question of I hit the bottom of my barrel, I have, but it wasn't the dark night of the soul. I didn't wait until I got there to take action. And I want to bring this piece that in these healing spaces, the goal is not suffering. The goal is not who suffered more or to compare whose suffering is more valid than the other. The goal is growth. And you can decide to growth without having to chop off your left arm. If your parent tells you not to put your hand on the stove, you can listen to them and learn your lesson that way. you can do the thing that you're being told to do and not get to the super bad outcomes before you decide to change. And I thank all of the stars that that's the path I chose in my life, because I see the depths that other people have gotten to, and it seems rough. And I've had rough times, but I've never been in a state um where I was drinking myself into the, where I got into substance abuse. I was never in a state where I was feeling suicidal or like those things. I didn't get to these depths of depression and of other things. And I've been with a lot of people. I've helped a lot of people that were in those spaces when I was younger. Um, but didn't, I changed, or I listened to the messages that were coming my way before I got to those spaces.
Mhm.
But in my young life, I was feeling really lonely. Like my high school years was a lonely, lonely time. I would spend my summers alone playing computer, and I had no friends. I live in the country, and there was no one around. And so that's the darkest that it got in terms of where I was, just because there was no one. And I'm an only kid, so no brothers, no sisters. My dad was also a programmer. My parents were divorced, and so I didn't know how to make friends, and so I would go play basketball, and I was always the last one picked. But I would hang out with the older kids. They would stay until 3 in the morning, and I could stay out as late as I wanted. And I would shoot hoops with the kids that were older that weren't in my age. And weirdly enough, I kept hanging out with older kids, and they were fine with me. They enjoyed spending time with me, and those were, as they weren't friends, but they were people I could interact with in sort of a neutral way. But it wasn't a moment where I was like, okay, this is too much to take, or like I can't. But when the messages came, I listened and I was like, okay, I want out of this. Like this is
Mhm.
negative. This isn't good for me. Let's do something different. And thankfully that happened. That like I would be a raging asshole, but it happened at around 17. Like I got turned around by a girl who didn't react. I was attacking people, like me being mean with words because I wasn't big, and I was driving people away, and she reacted differently. She said, "Max, you don't have to be mean," and I stopped dead in my tracks.
Mhm.
I realized I was making choices that were hurting me, and that she made a different choice, and that showed me that I was the reason.
Mhm.
She didn't return that energy. I was left with that energy, and she showed me that I was initiating this exchange. And I was like, fuck, I've been driving people away. I'm alone because of me.
Mhm.
And I was like, I gotta change. I gotta do something about this. She's right.
Yeah. I hear that, and what I hear is that a lot of men, and I believe I've gone through part of this, is that we go through those behaviors, many of us, I can't speak for everyone,
Hmm.
in some ways of to validate and to prove like our unworthiness, that we will push everyone away and no one will love us because of how I act. And it sounds like this one time she finally said, uh, you don't have to do that. And she t- did something to your brain chemistry to say, stop trying to prove you're unworthy, unlovable, and you have to be on your own, that, hey, you don't have to act that way. Do you feel that there was some of that going on, like almost proving that you weren't lovable or worthy or whatever word you want to put in there?
Definitely. And I will say, my most recent difficult time was because of when such episode again. Like, you've heard of this term, probably, the spiral path, is that we keep going around the spiral path, and our wounds heal, but we get to finer, they get more subtle, they get harder to detect, even though they have the same flavor. Like you come back to them and they're like, oh, you again.
Yeah.
Right, but the sandpaper is a little, as less grit this time, right? Like you're like the big stuff is gone, and now you're in the little details. And the
Hmm.
latest thing that happened to me was I was overwhelming myself. I was keeping my schedule, like I was in I was doing Breathwork facilitator training. I did 4 ISTAs last year, plus plus another 9-month training with called Teachings of the Temple. And through that, I was holding a full-time job, being a temple facilitator in my off time and trying to start a breathwork business. Um, I was literally trying to prove to myself that I was gonna fail. Like I was piling on so much on top that I literally was making it a self-fulfilling prophecy that I wasn't gonna be good enough. And it's an unconscious behavior, but when it broke to my face, like when I could finally see it, like all of the ways, and I'd recruited people into this endeavor, like my partner, and like, tell me how I'm not gonna succeed and how I'm gonna fuck this up. But right, like unconsciously that when I realized I wrote her an apology letter. And I was
Mm,
like, I've been trying to prove to myself that I'm not great and I failed. The great thing is I failed. I managed to hold it all together, and and I saw that it was wobbling and it was about to all break. I was like, I got to do something about this because like it's gonna break. And like I at that point I broke. Like I let my heart break and I went into the wound. And I was like, what is this? And I realized that
mm,
I wasn't letting love in. I was pushing people once again, pushing people away. When for the last year and a half, everyone that I'd met had been telling me like, you should go do these things. You're amazing. We love you when we're in a room with you. I was getting all of these exterior feedback of love, and I was just like doing everything I could to just like keep it at bay. Like, no, can't, I won't feel this love. I don't want to feel this love. It's a lot of freaking love. I don't want to feel it. And at some point I realized, fuck, if I want to do this, I need to let more love in because
yeah.
I'm not gonna be able to change my life and do these things if I'm not ready to receive the love that's everywhere around me, that
Mm.
people want to give me, the people that want to help me, the and then, I'm transitioning to being a coach from like my old work and all of that, and an uncle shows up and he goes, "Hey, can I pay for your temple space?" And he gave me $10,000. I I know full well that 3 months ago, or yeah, this was December, I wouldn't have been able to say yes from a full open heart because I that would have been too much. And now I was ready for it, and now it was happening, and it was there. So
Wow.
yeah, trying to prove like it's still happening today. It's more subtle and it's different ways, and I have to catch it in a like it took me a long time to catch it, but it's some of the ways that this shows up.
I'm right there with you, man. Like, it resonates deeply. And I brought up earlier in this discussion of doing like this event here in Guatemala and all of the things that could go wrong. And this 2 days that I'm here before the event, I'm going into the community and handing out flyers and talking to people and inviting them. And it's not something I've ever done. I've been mostly online
Yeah.
coaching and all that. When I was a physio, it was different. I worked for agencies and whatnot. Um, but now I have to physically go and ask, "Hi, my name's Kyle. How are you? Would you like to come to my event? This is what it can help you." And the resistance I've been feeling in
Yeah,
doing
how
that,
does that feel for you? Like
so shitty, so
describe the sensations in your body,
so deeply
if you
shitty.
can.
Like I had recommendations from the manager of the event space of certain cafes to go where people hang
Mhm.
out because I'm not familiar with this town that much or how it works.
So you're
People
asking strangers, right? Like you're
straight up.
physically, yeah.
And some of these people are just here for the day. So they're not even going to be here. Or it's the end of the season. So a lot of people have left. There's not as many people around. Some people don't even speak English. So um, I'm just like in this space of testing all of my introversion to go out there and put myself on the line for love, for the idea that I'm here on this podcast for. The whole idea behind this is to rage on, is to move through all of the pain, move through all of the fear, and take the action and do the thing anyway.
Mhm.
And there's that resistance gets in the way of saying, I don't even want to go talk to these people. Don't hand out the flyers. Just let the whole event collapse. No one will come. I'll go home and I don't have to face the possibilities of failure of the event or the possible successes of the event and the love that could come from it, from
Yeah.
being able to give my gift.
And which one is more scary if you're being honest?
If I'm being honest, because this is my first time doing this specific event, um, I personally, I think it is more the failure end because I've been saying that this is a test run for this specific event just to get feedback, get information, just like we
Mhm.
discussed earlier about like dating,
Yeah.
to see what works, what doesn't. Do they like it? Do they absolutely fucking hate it? Do they think they wasted their time? Right?
Mhm.
Did the music work? Whatever.
Yeah.
But if I just kept saying, like, if I got good feedback from it, it would almost provide the validation that I have something here and
Mhm.
would give me the propulsion, the energy to go into the next event with more confidence that, okay, there's some validation here. Now I have less resistance going out to attract people for the next one. Right. And I'm never going to know. Just like when I started my first business, my first year
Mhm.
at a physiotherapy school, that was an absolute miserable, anxiety induced failure where I had no direction. I wouldn't have known unless I went through that disgustingly miserable time and tried it in that 1 year to know that's not the business I want. And thankfully I
Mm.
did it. It sucked ass, it sucked terribly. And I'm so glad I'm not there anymore. But now I'm at that next, there's always a next resistance wall, right?
Yeah.
And so with that, I bring up the topic of rage. That's what this podcast is about. And I'm curious where you are now. Rage, in my opinion, is a deep form of love. That if we see someone in our life at risk of being hurt by someone, that we don't step in out of fear, out of anger. No, we step in
Mhm.
out of love. And that love comes in the form of rage. It is our darkness in action saying, you're not going to fucking do anything to my friend. And I will
Yeah.
risk my life and put my life on the line for them. That is rage. So whether it's through your career, relationally, personally, is there a specific someone, group of people, or an idea that you rage for at this time in your life?
Um, yeah, I would say at this point, I went all in on temple spaces. It's definitely like my like the thing that's really close to my heart, and I'm really putting all of my life in it in a very real sense. We're like I'm transitioning a space here to start holding events, and at some point I don't plan on having kids, and so I'm probably going to give this space away. But the idea is to build community around these spaces and bringing, and so I'll word it in the more complicated way, but the where it comes to love and where I see it becomes rage is when, to me, is when limits are crossed, right? Like it's boundaries have been crossed. And I feel like as a society, the sacred has been forgotten.
Mhm.
And we've lost, and especially in Quebec, where in the 1970s, the church was pushed out. And so the state is now, I don't know what the term in English for that is, like, um,
Where the state is pushed out of.
the church and state like were separated in
Oh,
1976 here, the
yes.
1970s, because the Catholic Church was really into families and homes, and so there was a huge pushback against religion. But like until the late 1970s, um, school teachers were priests and nuns in
Mm.
Quebec, and women had to have children, like because the French Canadian situation, essentially the church was telling women to have as many babies as possible so that we don't get eradicated and we don't our culture survives. Because of that, like spiritual life died here, and very specifically, there's no more rituals. All of the rituals in our lives are gone. And so, what I'm striving through temple culture to recreate is what Josh Schrei from the Emerald podcast calls right relationship. And so, is how do we re enter right relationship with things like death? with the different themes of our lives, with celebration. And so,
Mm.
how about we create bragging rituals where we celebrate each other? We celebrate each other's success, and nothing is allowed that will minimize those successes. We're only here to cheer on and to make all of the space for that. And it's creating ritual, intentional spaces for the things that have been pushed away and that are, I feel, not, they don't have a space anymore. And because they don't have a space, we're dying inside. Because we don't get to celebrate. Once we get out of high school, there's no big celebrations anymore. There's
Mhm.
birthdays, but they're just like I made it another year. But there's no time where we get to fully celebrate the things that we're grateful for, that we've achieved. And so it's marking time in a sense, in a very real way with all of these things, and it's bringing this in community and recreating a culture of having this having this shared these shared values in the end, and how we create space for all of life that is currently not being thought of, or not doesn't have the space. And so for grief, for rage, I
Mhm.
create an event called Furious for revenge, right? Like, where are those spaces where we can go and express those denser spaces, but also joy, also fully lean into joy, to love, to devotion, to all of these things that we need in our lives, and that we so have, I feel we've been robbed of. A life without devotion is doesn't have all of the flavors it can have in it, but you don't want to be devoted to false
Mhm.
idols. Yeah. And so how do we bring that back in, and how do we create things that are not dogmatic but that are to celebrate these energies and to have them be embodied, and come in community to give those things yeah, a body, literally give those energies a body.
I love that, man. I love it that you're coming at it from different angles and really just bringing back deeper connection. Something that just society as a whole, I know in America at least, is lacking. We're lacking touch, we're lacking connection, eye contact. Just everything's very superficial. Everything's about dollars. And so I love how you're bringing that back. And I would love to attend the next time I'm up in the Montreal area. I'll also get myself some food. I love it up there. But
You're
I
welcome to
pre
stay at my place anytime.
yeah, I'll definitely let you know, man. But I love everything that you shared, and I like to finish up here with some rapid fire questions, as well as my final question for you for the day. The first one is, what's one non-negotiable activity you do daily to keep you at your best?
Breathing. It's available all the time. It's there. When I clearly I wait in lines a lot. I'm never waiting in line anymore. I'm breathing. There's always an opportunity. 5 minutes in the car, wherever it is, connect to your breath. Every chance you get. It's
Beautiful.
there's no way to breathe outside of right here, right now. It's the
Yeah.
best.
Well, if you're not waiting in lines anymore, then you're probably gonna be single for a while longer. Awesome, man. What this is my personal favorite. What food is your guilty pleasure?
Guilty pleasure. What food is my guilty pleasure? I think chocolate chip cookies.
Oh, yes.
With milk, dipped in milk, they're definitely the guilty pleasure.
Yes. I love that. I love it. Um, what is one thing that very few people know about you that you wish more people knew?
That very few people knew about me. That I'm mostly solitary. Even though I'm in the spotlight a lot in my in my job as a facilitator and everything, I'm a bit of an hermit. Like I have my things, and I've lived the same house my whole life, and so yeah, I'm kind of a bit of a recluse, even though I'm in public a lot.
I can resonate there. I can resonate. Um, what did I? Oh, yes. I was like, where's my fourth one? What brings you the most joy in life right now?
Brings me the most joy in life right now. Right now, it's everything to do with building my coaching business. It's all of the little things. I've been in a planning job forever, and now like getting to build a website, like doing all of the things and doing it myself instead of having other people do it for me. It feels like I'm coming back to matter and like putting my hands in the soil type of thing. Yeah, so it's been a more direct feedback loop, and
Hmm,
it feels really good these days to be doing that. And working on this house has also been my life for the last 7 years. Built this whole house almost by, like, with my own hands, not by myself. A lot of people helped. So those two things are definitely the things that currently I'm really enjoying. Finishing these last spaces that need finishing.
love that. Love that. Yeah, when you get your hands in, there's a deeper connection and the result is deeper as well. I say that with our food often, that
Hmm.
we're so
Yeah.
disconnected with our food that if we were closer connected to it, we would appreciate it more. Amazing, man. I just have one final question for you. If at this moment I hit a button and your microphone would speak to the entire world, everyone could understand you. So in this case, everyone speaks English. What message would you share with every human being at this current moment in society in 2024 that you believe they need to hear?
Hmm. It's all gonna be okay.
I love that. Beautiful, man. Your microphone is off. Sometimes it's the simplest things that people really do just need to hear, and it's all going to be okay. Max, it's been a pleasure to hear from you, to hear your side of things and your perspective on relationships, honesty, values. And I knew this was a conversation I wanted to have, and there's just so much that resonates with your story and in mine. So, with that, what's next for you? Where can people find you? If they're interested in working with you, coming to your temple spaces or working with you.
So I'm at findbreath.ca. I'm Yeah, everything can be found there. Most of my online work is there. Obviously, if people are in Montreal, you never know. You can come to the events. If you come by Montreal, Ecstatic Temple in Montreal is where we hold it. We hold the events. So get in touch with me. I'm at Find Breath on Facebook and all of those things. I have a program called MindKido, which is about using your natural internal brain circuitry that normally creates downward spiral loops to create upward rising loops. I truly believe it's life changing. It's a lot of the techniques that I've used myself in my life to get to where I am. And so that's what I'm really working on right now. And it's my main offer, and it's what I'm putting out in the world at this time. So that's the big thing. And then yeah, the rest is in-person events. So if people are in Montreal or coming through Montreal, definitely get in touch, and we can hook you up with events that are local.
Awesome, man. Love it. I'm definitely going to let you know the next time I'm up there. And I love Montreal. And so it'd be a pleasure to come. Everyone, if you've listened in, definitely check out Max. I will have everything tagged underneath in the notes of the podcast. Max, it's been a pleasure, brother. I'm super happy to have you on here today. Thank you for bringing your heart and your honesty. And I look forward to seeing you hopefully in the near future, man. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me.